This is Ted from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, and it's live chat. I'm filling in for Dave today, and with us are John and Jeremy from One Deck Dungeon. Introduce yourselves. Talk about you know about the.
Jeremy, you want to
You
go?
guys want to talk about?
Sorry, hang on. I have the thing playing, so
Yeah,
I'm hearing.
I'm hearing an echo of everything from someone. Is it you, Jeremy?
Yeah, you
It
gotta.
must have been from me. I don't know why.
It's very faint. We can ignore it.
Sorry, I have it open in like
Yeah,
three
you have
different
the
windows, which I didn't realize. So, all right, I think I'm okay now. Yes, I'm not hearing any echoes. Anybody hearing
I
echoes?
apologize.
That is 100% my fault. I'm sorry about that. So, yeah, hi, I'm Jeremy.
All right. I'm John, also from Handelabra Games. We do digital tabletop games. And you might know us from Sentinels of the Multiverse, that you can play on all kinds of platforms. We have Bottom of the Ninth as well. And our latest project is One Deck Dungeon, as you can see behind Jeremy.
Yay, there it is.
So now One Deck Dungeon is, not only a physical board game, but you're looking to go digital with it and have it as just an app. Is that correct?
Yeah, so basically what Handelabra Games does is we partner with the tabletop companies. So we're not actually a tabletop company. We partner with the companies that have made these games, and then we work with them to turn them into either apps or Steam games or what have you. And so One Deck Dungeon is the one that we're working on now. This is designed by Chris Seslick from Asmati Games, and its sort of goal is to be an entire roguelike dungeon crawling adventure, all encompassed in a single deck of cards with some dice. And, we partnered with them. We met up with them at Gen Con this year. And, we actually have been tracking this game for a while. It was on Kickstarter last year, and then it kickstarted an expansion this year. And it really does feel like you're playing a roguelike just with cards and dice instead of your controller or your keyboard and mouse. And so, yeah, and that's basically what we do. We're doing that with this. We did it with Sentinels in the Multiverse, which you can see behind me over here, which is a superhero comic book themed card game where you play as a team of superheroes trying to take on a villain. And like I said, what we do is we sort of try to capture what's fun at the core of these games and then do 100% faithful adaptations of them. We're not trying to just license someone's characters and make a new game. We actually love, the tabletop game, and we want to turn that into an app that you play the same game. You just happen to be playing it digitally.
Very cool. So looking at the Kickstarter for One Deck Dungeon digital, you said that it kind of was moving a little bit slow around the holidays, but you said that it's seeing traction again.
Yeah.
What
the total amount, and if you want to check it out, go to onedeckdigital.com. The total amount we needed to actually build it is 20,000, which we reached probably about the midway point. But then after that, it really just kind of stalled. Some of it, I think, was the holiday. So it was very slow for like a week in the middle there. But as of yesterday, it's picking back up again. We did just reach our first stretch goal yesterday. And with the speed we're moving, I think we're easily going to get through the next stretch goal at least. We got 24 hours before it closes. It closes tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. And so, yeah, if anybody's interested.
You can scroll down to the description below. The link for the Kickstarter is go right to it. Along with some other stuff that's going on there. It's Kickstarter is up to 26,000 out of the goal of 20,000. Clearly working here. And as you said, it's got 24 hours left. Definitely going to fund happen. So if you want to get on board or you want to just go check out the Kickstarter, as soon as this live chat is over, go check that out and back it.
Yeah. You often see that in Kickstarters when like it reaches the goal, then people are like, "Oh, now I'll back it," and it's like, wait, that doesn't make sense. But okay, yeah.
Well, Kickstarter is a very weird market, and I've talked to a lot of people who are active within that community, because it absolutely is a community. There are people who want nothing to do with a maybe. Other people who are all about it, And there's some people who are like, well, I'm only going to back it if it's going to actually kick. I've seen people who very much jump on it. It's like, well, I like it, so there's no reason not to support it. So it doesn't matter where it is. There could be a minute left and it has no chance of making it, but they jump on as a backer. At the people who are like, well, I only ever back things in that last 48 hours or first 48 hours. It's like,
everyone's got their own personal sort of take on it, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's funny too, because I know, I mean, everybody has their own reasons behind that, and I'm sure, we've definitely dealt with people who, they've been burned before, and I know that happens. It's interesting. I think that has happened more often in the video game side than it ever has on the tabletop side. I mean, there certainly are tabletop games that took forever, but you find that if you look at if you back a lot of tabletop games, they tend to do pretty much what they say they're going to do, even if it's a little bit late. I haven't yet had backed a tabletop Kickstarter that failed entirely to deliver. Maybe they were late, but they didn't fail to deliver. Whereas on the video game side, there have definitely been a few where it's like, oh yeah, I'll give these people my $10 for a Steam key, and then 3 years later, the company's gone and nobody knows who they are or where they've gone. Wah, wah.
That's not us.
Well, I've backed things on Kickstarter, and it's been a rocky road at times. I've had ones where it's literally, oh, well, here you go. I'm gonna, it's funded and it's X release date, and they release early or they release on time. And I've had ones where you wait an extra year and a half, and like, am I ever going to see this?
Yeah.
And then it finally does arrive. My business partner Dave, he wound up backing something. It was a gaming mat, and like I think it was early days of Nerdarchy. That like all it is supposed to be just a mat that's got either hexes or grids on it. And this was the first thing that as a Kickstarter thing that any of my friends did. And so it's got to be at least 3 years.
Right.
And to this date, there's still no delivered product. And I'm like, well,
just like a neoprene printed map. How complicated?
As it wasn't my purchase, I don't know all the ins and the outs of it. All I know is like, the table that I game on is literally right behind this computer screen, and a neoprene mat on it with hexes, because that's what he chose to get. That's where it would be, and there's a map there, but it's not that one. It's not the one that was backed on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I don't know, man.
The only category I really shy away from on Kickstarter is like hardware projects, typically, because they're almost always way like they overpromise and underdeliver. Like it's always an individual thing, but like that's something that's like almost contagious in the hardware space. It's like, we're going to make this amazing thing that no one's ever been able to do, and it's like there's a reason no one's been able to do it,
Yeah, I've definitely had that experience. Like, in fact, recently I was doing some searches for like wireless Bluetooth headphones, because I tried the Apple ones and they don't fit in my ears, so I returned them. I actually gave them to my wife because she likes them. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna do a search. And like 5 of the ones were like the greatest wireless Bluetooth headphones on Kickstarter. And I'm like, no, I want to buy something now. I don't want to hear about how great these are going to be 5 years from now. Like, show me
solving problems with magic.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. I'm like, these look amazing, but they're not shipping yet. I wonder why they're not shipping yet. And yeah, they've raised $10 million or whatever it is. But yeah, I agree. So I basically saying I agree with John. Like, if it's an already shipping product for hardware, that's fine. I don't tend to kickstart those. I did kickstart an awesome belt called Magzook, which is like a magnetic belt, so that the closure, you can actually slide it to any size you need instead of having like individual holes, which is great because I can like be constantly resizing it, which I like a lot, depending on like, am I tucking my shirt in? Am I not tucking my shirt in? Am I wearing, my fat jeans or my thin jeans? It's like, I don't know. Maybe that's a weird thing to be excited about, but I thought it was a really cool belt.
If that's what is an interest to you, then great. But that's the great part about Kickstarter, is you have the ability to literally back the things that were of interest to you, and it's not.
Yeah, I think it's one thing I really like about it is that you can just have a cool idea, or that will never, like, a bank would never give you money for, right? Like, that's sort of the real core of it, is you can do things that you wouldn't be able to do in the traditional finance way. So,
so you know, getting back to is it Handelabra?
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you have anything that is like a dream project that, you know, you're allowed to talk about, or that, you know, you want to speculate on, that if you could get any board game or card game or whatnot that you'd like to be able to move into the digital space?
That's a really good question. I don't know that I've even thought about it. Yeah,
I've definitely thought about it, but we don't get that question. That's a good one. Points to you, interviewer.
Yeah, well done.
we don't use that word though. We don't use interview. Just a live chat. Just you know,
points to Ted.
Points to Ted. There you go. Yeah, I don't know. Why don't you field this, John, while I think for a minute?
Yeah. So for me, I really want to explore how a legacy game could work in a digital space. I really enjoy playing legacy games. I'm playing through Seafall right now with a group, and played through most of Risk Legacy. Haven't done Pandemic yet, but I'd like to do that. But like, one of the things that's interesting, and this comes back, I was going to mention about One Deck Dungeon, is like games that are like legacy games, and One Deck Dungeon itself as well, is they're inspired by video games and what you can do with video games, bringing that to the board game space, and then bringing it back to the digital, like sort of informed by the tabletop, is really interesting. And I think there could be some cool stuff to do there. But I talked to Rob Davio at GDC, but we haven't gotten anything happening. So maybe someday.
Yeah.
So in the chat, you know, one of our fans, Earth Gaming, says it's like, whose line is it anyway? You know, the points just don't matter. So
5,000 points to Jeremy.
Yeah, and just to follow up on what John was saying, like, there are definitely IPs I would love to work in, but I don't know that there is even necessarily the games yet, at least not in the way. Like the perfect example is the Sentinel system. One of the reasons why I really enjoy Sentinels of the Multiverse is because it doesn't have any deck building in it. You know, I don't like Magic. I don't like Legendary, because that's not the mechanic that I like. What I like about Sentinels is that I get to say, this game, I'm going to be Legacy. So I'm going to be this stalwart hero, and I know his deck. I know every card. I know what they all do.
Yeah. Someone did the work of balancing the deck and making it work.
Exactly. And so being able to bring that model to other IPs is something that I would love to do. Like, I actually had a dream 2 years ago to do like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer version of Sentinels of the Multiverse, where like the heroes are like Buffy and Xander and Willow and all these people, and then the big bads are, you know, the trio and Adam and all the other things.
You could have an angel villain and an angel hero.
Exactly, an angel villain, an angel hero, like the whole 9 yards. And I actually wrote up a bunch of examples and concepts or whatever, and it looks like I was just on the wrong time, because within the last 12 months, there've literally been 3 Buffy board or card games released. So I was on the leading edge. If I had just jumped at the chance, I think we could have had it. But there's a Buffy Legendary now. There's a Buffy board game. There's a Buffy trading card game. I'm going to get them all and probably play them, but I really wish we would have been able to do that, because that would have been a lot of fun.
Guys at all familiar with the Dresden Files?
Yeah.
Book series by Jim Butcher?
Mm-hmm.
At least a card game that it's kind of like what you were talking about, where, you know, you choose the hero or the group of heroes that you're going to be up against the story deck, and there is no deck building component. You know, it's like, okay, well, you want to be Harry and Mouse. Okay, you shuffle your cards together, and that's what you work with, as opposed to, okay, well, there's a field of good guy cards, and, you know, you're like your typical, you know, and you got to acquire to be able to keep moving.
Right. Yeah, and in fact, that game, so the last Kickstarter that we did was for Sentinels. We kickstarted what we call Season 2, which was like the big final batch of expansions from the tabletop, and then bringing those into the video game. And that Kickstarter was actually running at the same time as the Dresden Files collectible card game, or Dresden Files cooperative card game Kickstarter. And we actually had Fred on our live stream playing Sentinels with us one night, because a Sentinels character crosses over into the Dresden Files. Ra from Sentinels is actually a promo character.
Yeah, and they have a digital version that another studio made that's on Steam right now, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So I was wondering what the Raw character was, because I'm very familiar with the Dresden Files, and I'm like, I don't know. But by the time it was actually finally released, like, and I got the thing delivered, I'm like, I don't know who this character is. So
Yeah,
you actually answered the question for me. Woohoo!
There you go. Yeah, Ra is one of the, and it's interesting. The Sentinels team has a podcast where they actually go into the lore of all of their characters, and so Ra is sort of a reconstituted Ra, where it was, an archaeologist sort of goes exploring in Egypt and sort of is possessed by the soul of Ra or whatever. And that's who Ra is in the Sentinels game. And then the Ra who's in Dresden Files, I think, is sort of an offshoot concept that's somewhat similar, but a slightly different character. So it's very interesting.
They've got, so I don't know if you're familiar with sort of the meta levels of Sentinels, but they've, it's not just the superheroes. They've also invented a publishing company that makes the comics that are in the Sentinels. So like there's these multiple levels of fiction that they've created. And so one of the comic books that this company makes is called Desperation, which is sort of like Marvel's What If or whatever, where like the characters do sorts of random things. And so sort of the conceit that they've come up with is that whenever they do a crossover or a cross promotion, that's sort of a story that was in this weird, what if comic book. It's not part of the regular canon, but it's something that was, in the pages of Sentinel Comics.
Right.
Where Ra was an investigator or Fanatic went into a dungeon.
Yeah.
Well, that is pretty cool. I'm back in the days when I actually read comics on a regular basis, I was a big fan of What If. So
and
to see that it's
Yeah, my son keeps asking me, is there a movie or a TV show or a book where DC heroes get to fight alongside Marvel heroes? This was a question he literally asked me last night, and I was like, I don't think there's a movie.
There's comics for sure. And usually it's versus, not alongside, but they're versus, and then they resolve their differences and fight the bad guy, which is always what happens.
Right.
But
as I said, I'm like, there's definitely comics. I don't know if there's ever been a movie or a TV show, but definitely comics.
Yeah, I think I'm maybe in like the old Hulk series, there might have been the crossover. I can't remember, but like in those olden days, the licensors were a little more flexible. So I'm not sure if they ever did make it onto the screen that way, though.
Well, it's there's not a huge amount of Marvel DC cooperation in general. So, and I don't think
especially not now. Yeah.
Did you guys want to chat about today? Did you guys want to go more in depth about any projects? Do you want to direction? You want to nerd out on one of the different topics that we talked about previously?
Yeah, well, I mean, if we're already talking comics, I just wanted to make sure everybody in the audience has checked out the new Infinity War trailer. Because speaking of Marvel, that looks cool.
Well, that is. Yeah, that is one of those things that there's a lot of people who have put forth the idea that seen up to Marvel previously, just the prequel to what Infinity War, part 1 and part 2,
just set up.
Yeah, that's all the prequel. This is set up to what this is supposed to be.
It's great setup. But yeah,
totally. I've watched them all, multiple times, short of what's currently in the theater. I'm loving what they're doing. I can't wait to see, what Infinity War has to offer. John and I were already speculating, before we hit the live button about, things that could happen just based off of or what was said in the trailer. So I thought that was
just to discuss sort of trailers as an art form, because it's one of the things that, like, I know that I have a lot of friends recently who've sort of jumped on this concept of like the Unsullied, where like they don't watch any trailers. They're like, I know I want to see that movie, I'm not going to watch a trailer, I'm just going to go in completely unspoiled and I'm going to see whatever. And it's interesting because, like, whether it's Star Wars The Last Jedi or Thor Ragnarok, like the whole thing with Thor Ragnarok was like, imagine how cool that would have been if you didn't know there was going to be Planet Hulk in this movie and you learned about it in the theater with everybody else. Like, how cool would that be? Well, it would have been, but it was pretty cool when I saw it in the trailer too. And the thing I liked about this trailer is that because of what you just said, because it's like if you're paying attention at all, you know all of the setup. There's really almost no way to spoil this movie. You know what I mean? Like, they've been laying so many seeds that, like, there's no character that can show up. Well, I guess maybe there could be, in which case maybe they haven't spoiled it yet. But it seems to me like this wasn't one of those ones where, like, oh, and there's that thing at the very end, like Spider-Man showing up in Civil War or Hulk showing up in Thor. That, like, I don't think there's going to be something like that. And this is just going to be pure, unadulterated awesome from beginning to end. And you don't have to worry about being spoiled. At least that was my take on it. I don't know.
Yeah. One thing I really like when they pull it off correctly in trailers is when they deceive you with the trailer. I think Doctor Strange might have done that, where they sort of made it look like here's the obvious plot of the movie, but then it totally wasn't.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like, I'm not sure if it was Doctor Strange, but I have seen trailers that are like that, where they seem to reveal the plot and they seem to show you what's going on, but then the movie totally turns it on its head.
Well, so here's a deep cut about those. The Matrix. The trailers for The Matrix were, they succeeded in being completely mysterious, but also giving you absolutely no idea what you were in for. At least that was my experience of it.
Oh, it's just you and me now, Jeremy, according to Google.
Uh-oh. What happened? All right, we've taken over the Nerdarchy station.
Well, it probably means that Ted is on his own.
Let's see here. Where did you go? This is a different chat, right?
I'm going to send an email.
Okay, cool. All right, well, the Handelabra team has invaded.
I don't know if we're on live or what.
I'm still seeing myself. Out there in YouTube chat land, are you seeing me and John and not?
Oh, like you're like, is YouTube like hooked up to this Hangout somehow directly? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Oh, okay. Then we've taken over.
We're on live. We're still on. Yep. All right. Well, hopefully Ted will be able to join back in.
He was his sort of internet seemed to be cutting out a little bit or something.
Yeah.
At times. I can't send an email.
Oh, they see just me, and you hear John. Oh, I guess because I wasn't the host.
It's just you're talking more, and it's not switching over or something. Maybe, I don't know.
I only see Jeremy, but I can hear John. All right. Well,
now we're in control, so it's Nerdarchy. It's anarchy.
It's anarchy in the world today.
It's literally working.
I guess we can take questions. Is there if anybody has a question in the chat about what we do or who we are, where we come from, we'd be happy to talk about that.
There are some questions. I'm not in the chat, but Jeremy can look at it.
Ugh. Yeah, this is interesting.
Nerdarchy left group chat. Yeah.
I've never used the YouTube live stuff before. We stream on Twitch, which I believe that's in the link at the bottom there. You know, we use YouTube for like posting stuff after the fact, but we've never used their live system before. So I guess I can go a little bit into depth into what One Deck Dungeon is if there's anybody out there who doesn't know what this is and just heard us say, oh, here we go. What is One Deck Dungeon about? Thank you, Paul. All right, so One Deck Dungeon here. I'm gonna go through a quick version of like the demo that I gave while we were at PAX Unplugged. So you basically build your party out of the 5 heroes that come in the box. You can play as either a single hero or as a party of 2. And so for this, I'll take the warrior here. So I'm going to show this up here. So that's the warrior, and you can see her sort of stats there. She's got strength, agility, magic, health, as well as a heroic feat, and then a power at the bottom. And the way that the game essentially works is those stats determine which of the colored dice you get to roll, at least at the beginning of the game, because your loot can sort of up that and change it. And the rest of the entire game is in this single deck of cards. Hence the One Deck Dungeon. So these cards are everything else that you do in the game or need for the game. You've got they represent the time that you actually have to spend in order to take actions. They are the doors that you discover when you explore. When you open them, they are the encounters that you take on. So you've got, this is actually what's called a peril. And so this is, you have to overcome it either with your agility or with magic in this case.
Usually a trap or something.
Yeah, it's like a trap.
Like a physical obstacle.
Yeah, a boulder in this case. Then you've got combat, where you've got like the Phantom here. Oh, is Ted back?
I am back. I apologize. I don't know what it is about me doing live chats, but it seems I become cursed every time I do one of these things. Something happens, my computer crashes.
Well, we stayed up on YouTube, so magically.
I get so long as a as the host, you have so long before the thing will just end on you. So like had to go through the restart process and then get back to the page and get back into the Hangout. And the last time I did this, Nate and Dave were en route to an event, and it's like, oh, I'll come in and I'll talk to these Fantasy Grounds people or Fantasy Grounds College people, and again around the same part, I get the boot out of my own chat, and I'm like, what the flip?
What's going on?
So I hope that is the end of our problems, and before I do this again, I'm gonna have to have my laptop looked at.
I can tell you that since you came back on, you're sounding much better than you were before. There was like your video's clearer, and we're not getting as many glitches in the audio, so I think it's probably better this time.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll be happy about that.
All right, so I'm just going to finish answering, I think it was Paul's question, just a last little bit about how this works. So the card that you can see here, this is a combat encounter. You'll see these boxes. The goal is that you roll the different colored dice, and then you cover up the boxes with numbers that are equal to or greater on your dice. And then that's an encounter. But the cool thing, what I love the most about this game is because in typical roguelike fashion, you have your encounter, but then you have to pick up your loot. And so this card also becomes your loot. It can become a stat boost if you put it over here. It can become a new skill, power, or whatever that you can use down here. Or it also has XP along the side here that you can then use to start leveling up your character, which gives you, additional heroic dice that you can use, increases other things that like potions or powers. And then you slowly build up your character as you descend three layers down into the dungeon, with the hopes that by the time you reach the boss, you've powered yourself up enough that you will easily dispatch the boss and go home the victor.
Yeah, and the boss works a similar way. You have to roll your dice and fill up the boxes, but it's a little different because the boss has its own hit points, and so you basically have sort of a pitched battle with the boss, as opposed to the regular encounters. You always succeed. You just might take some damage, basically.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. Like, if you end up not having enough dice to cover up all the boxes, you still win. That's what John's saying here. But you will either take damage or you'll have to spend more time. And because the deck is also your time, the faster you go through the deck, the fewer encounters you have, the less loot you gather. So it's always about like balancing how long it takes to do stuff in the dungeon versus, maybe you got really good loot off that last encounter, and so you don't have to worry so much about the time issue. So it really does feel like a roguelike that you're playing it like, oh, do I explore this extra room, or do I just try to descend, or how do I go? And there's lots of customization.
The other important piece is when you run out of health, the game is over. Start over like a roguelike. Yep. No continues.
So when we were, when I was so rudely, kicked out, we were talking about the Infinity War trailer. I don't know what wound up transpiring to that chat. I don't know if you reached a conclusion point and you moved on, or whether you totally freaked out and you're like, where'd Ted go? And
I think we just paused that thread so we can pick that back up.
Yeah, we can pick it back up. I think the last thing I was talking about was how we were talking about the art of the trailer and trailers not spoiling the movie or actively deceiving you into.
Yeah, you were talking about The Matrix, actually.
Yeah, talking about how I remember in the olden days, The Matrix, the trailer for that was really good in not telling you anything about what was actually going to happen. So like that moment in the movie was like,
oh yeah,
what is going on? And I loved that about it.
That was The Matrix was amazing the first time. And I mean, it's still an excellent movie, but like it's the first time watching it, like the first time watching Usual Suspects or something, right? Like same thing. Yeah.
So I think a trailer is supposed to do, several things. First and foremost, it's not supposed to spoil any of the big moments that you're going to find in the movie. It's supposed to get you hyped and excited about being there or about watching it, and it's supposed to make you ask questions about, oh well, what's going to happen to this, or what's going to happen to that, especially if it's a movie that's ongoing. So, like, things in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we're already familiar with these characters. We don't have to meet, Thor and Loki and the Guardians of the Galaxy and all these other characters in the movie. No one's going to have that be their first intro into Marvel.
Right.
Like that's just, almost a ludicrous statement to say, oh, well, that this you've read no comic books, seen no previous movie, you have no idea who any of these guys are, and you're not gonna sit down and then watch Infinity War. You're gonna start off smaller.
Although, to be fair, I think it would be super interesting to find someone like that and have them sit down and watch Infinity War. Just because, honestly, and I think a lot of people had this feeling too, superhero movies for so long were like, no one's ever going to know what's happening, so we got to tell the origin story in every single movie. And
if Infinity War was being made in the 90s, it would have the origin of every character, and then it would end.
That's exactly right. And that's the thing that's so frustrating is, like, trust the audience a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, even without the zeitgeist, if you don't think you can tell a good enough story without having to explain who everybody is and where they came from, then you're already not telling a good story. That's like trying to say, like, you have to do a movie about football and they would have to spend the first half hour explaining the intricacies of how football works. Like, no. That's not how that is. Like, you don't have to explain why this person is a fireman to explain that they're a fireman. You know what I mean? Like, well, they show him, like, when he was really young playing with matches and accidentally burning his hand and realizing that, oh no, I must save the world from fire. Like, no, he's just a fireman. He's just a superhero. He's just Spider-Man. That's all there is to it.
That is a really good point. And it's, I don't think there's really anything else that goes in that direction or makes you think that way, that you have to know why they're a superhero or how they became a superhero before they can be a superhero.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I think, is Spider-Man Homecoming I'm trying to remember if there's another, like, it's obviously there were previous Spider-Man movies, but, like, is there another, like, first in a series of a superhero movie where they didn't do the origin? Because they didn't. And it was really different, right?
Yeah.
Like, to not have the origin of Spider-Man, which was, I think, fine, as we were talking about, but it's really, like, even, a lot of the Avengers movies, they all had their individual movies, which are their origins, right? So.
Yeah, although I will tell you this, my son did ask when we came out of Spider-Man Homecoming, he was like, why didn't he get bit by a spider? Because, like, he knew that was the thing that was supposed to happen from, like, he's watched, like, the Ultimate Spider-Man or whatever it is on Netflix, and so he knows the origin story, but he was kind of like, how come I didn't get to see that part? And so it did take the other side of this a little bit. So after I just spent 20 minutes railing about why we don't need it, he did feel a little bit cheated that it jumped right in, and he was already sort of, like, meeting with the Avengers and doing all these things without getting to see sort of the big moment. But then again, someday he'll probably see one of those older Spider-Man.
There'll be a flashback.
Yeah.
In another movie. So circling back to the Infinity War, we see Spider-Man in there with, like, full-on Iron Spider armor, right?
That is definitely there. So I wonder how that's going to wind up transpiring. I mean, you've already seen, between, the other movies, the relationship between, Tony and Peter. So, like, that was something that, like, I think we saw coming, and given what Thanos has got, they're going to need all the help they can get.
I think he's going to have to activate kill mode or whatever.
Instant death mode or instant assassination mode. One thing I'm realizing now that I'm rethinking through it, I don't think we saw any Ant-Man in that trailer.
I did not see him in the trailer, but I mean his image is used.
Yeah, like I know he's in
the
there.
beginning scroll.
Yeah, he's definitely in it, and the Wasp might be too. I'm not sure.
Given how many characters they've displayed throughout all the previous movies, it's hard in that short amount of time to convey anything and give you every single character.
Yeah, totally.
Right. So one thing I just watched it, and I was curious about one thing. I don't know if any you guys picked up on. Was there a human version of the Vision at one point or something?
I think that is like Scarlet Witch having like a dream or a hallucination.
With it was Paul Bettany, wasn't it? Like
it was Paul Bettany.
Yeah. Okay, I wasn't like dreaming there. Like, okay.
Yeah, I think Scarlet Witch might have been dreaming, but yes,
Sure.
I think that that absolutely happened. You absolutely saw that, but I don't think that's going to happen like really in the movie.
Well,
But
my really loves Vision. In the Avengers movie, when like he picks up the hammer, that was it.
Oh,
It's like,
yeah.
wait a second, he's got everything that's Vision is, and he could technically wield Mjolnir. All right, he's it. He wins. And when you see in the trailer, Thanos plucking the Mind Stone.
oof.
Yeah, he's like picking his scab.
My son's like, did he just kill Vision?
Like,
so like that.
It's like, I don't know.
That becomes a interesting. I'm like, Teddy, we won't know till May. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
And we might not know until a year after that, or or the fall, or whenever they actually do the second movie. I guess it's all shot. It's just they're gonna produce it and everything. But
well, that is the other thing that trailers get to do, is they can show you pieces out of sequence.
Yeah.
So if they show like, oh well, I'm going to pull the stone off of his head, and then later on in the trailer you see him saying something or doing something that might imply one begets the other, but it could totally be a lie. Like that could be, okay, well, yeah, we just killed that character, and oops,
So what do you think they're trying to say with Thanos has the Infinity Gauntlet with 2 stones in it? Are they trying to say that maybe he's only going to get 2 in this movie and then 4 in the next movie, or what do you think?
I think it's going to be a minimum of 4 in the first movie, and that the battle is either in the second one is going to be to stop him from getting the stones, or he's got them all and now everybody's got to do everything within their power to defeat him. So
that's what's always so tough about this kind of situation, which is like, you obviously don't want Thanos to have a fully decked out Infinity Gauntlet, but I do kind of want to see Thanos have a fully decked out Infinity Gauntlet. Like, I want to see what kind of fire he can bring down on the universe with that. Although it's interesting, one of the things he said is not, I'm trying to take over the universe. He said something about, I'm trying to bring it into balance or something like that. So like, I'm wondering if they're doing that thing, which I think is really smart, which is make it so that the villain is not thinking they're doing something for evil, that they're just, you guys screwed everything up and I'm just here to set it straight. And if that means I have to be like the most powerful being in the universe to do it, that's fine. I'll do it. But like, I don't know.
I mean, in the comics, he's doing all this to impress his girlfriend.
Right. That's true.
So,
well, we can only speculate what the movie version is
we
going
haven't
to
seen
wind
that,
up doing.
Right? So I don't think they're doing that, but who knows? So
when Falcon wants to know is like, have all the stones been revealed yet? I believe we've only got 5 out of the 6.
Yeah, the Soul Gem, I think, is the one that is still not, we have not necessarily seen anywhere yet.
There was some Facebook chat going around that I saw earlier today where they're like, well, maybe the Soul Stone's in Wakanda, and that that then said, does that mean only the brothers have soul? So I thought that was an amusing comment.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think that probably Black Panther is going to lead into Infinity War in pretty much the same way that like Winter Soldier led into Age of Ultron, right? Because like the end of Winter Soldier completely shuffles the deck with regards to S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra and all the rest of it. And you can't really have Age of Ultron. Wait, or am I doing that? Have I got that backwards? What was
I think you got it right.
I think I got it right. Right, yeah. So like at the end of Winter Soldier, everything is like going to hell, and it like set the stage.
And everything.
Right. Okay, that's what I thought. And then so then Age of Ultron is like, this whole thing where like the world is a different place, and I'm not sure how this is supposed to work, and whatever. And I think that's going to be similar. I think Black Panther is definitely going to set up. There's a couple ominous lines in that trailer where he says, what happens here will determine what's going to happen for the rest of the world, or something like that. Yeah. And I think that's definitely going to lead us right into.
Well, and Ant-Man and the Wasp comes out before then too, doesn't it? And
Ant-Man and the Wasp comes out in between.
Right, so that's another wild card. Like that could do something different too, right? So.
And yeah, actually, maybe that's why we didn't see Ant-Man in this one. Maybe it's like he's not in this one, and then we get to see their movie, and then that's how they come in the second one. Maybe, I don't know. Interesting.
That's definitely an interesting take on it. So we'll have to see what winds up transpiring. Edwin wants to know the time stone that's with Doctor Strange, right?
Yeah, the Eye of Agamotto.
Oh yeah, the Eye of Agamotto.
Agamemnon.
Agamemnon. Yeah,
Agamotto, I think.
Yeah, that's the green one.
Yeah.
So let's run them down. The time stone is the green one. The mind stone is the yellow one in Vision. Is it the space stone is the Tesseract?
Yes.
And then what's the purple one?
And that we saw.
And Loki probably has that again.
Yeah.
The Power Stone?
Is that the Power Stone is purple, and then the Ether is red, which was Dark World.
And that's with the Collector, and the Power Stone is with the what are they called? The agents from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, the Nova Corps.
Nova Corps.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
They gave the stone to the Nova Corps for protection, as if that's going to save it from Thanos.
Yeah, exactly.
And
we'll probably see John C. Reilly just getting punched by Thanos.
The Tesseract was in the vault, in Thor, and he sends Loki to the vault to go, put this, to deal with it. I won't give any Thor Ragnarok spoilers. So like there's no way that Loki didn't take the Tesseract.
Apparently they did a few different takes of that bit, and they didn't decide like how exactly they were going to play it until like final editing.
But I think you actually see in the Infinity War trailer Loki holding the Tesseract.
He's holding it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
there you go.
To me that's a signed, sealed, and delivered.
Unless it's a dream.
Unless it's a dream.
A dream. Unless it's a hallucination in a pool where Thor gets to see all the stones again or something like that.
It's one of those things, like it can go in so many different directions. I'm curious to see how it's all gonna pan out. And
then what's gonna happen after Infinity War, like 2 or whatever they're gonna call it, like.
Yeah, and they've already
is that time to reboot, or is that are they going to carry on with new characters? Or
based on some of the stuff I've been reading, they have this like huge library of like 2,000 characters, and they plan on basically just continuing to introduce new ones and developing them and doing new interesting stories in that way in this same universe. So like, I think everybody sort of knows that Iron Man and Captain America, short of maybe cameos, are probably going to be done after this. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be dead, although they might be. Who knows?
Yeah, but Bucky can be Captain America.
Bucky can be Captain America. Falcon can be Captain America. Like there's all kinds of ways to take it in that direction with the mantle. But I definitely think that, Chris Evans has been trying to retire from movies for like 5 years at this point.
But once you wind up committing to a project, it's you pretty much are gonna do it. And I think that these actors have signed on for the whole thing. So like we'll get through Infinity War, and then it's going to be a crapshoot as to whether we see any of these main characters as their own stories, or, as you were talking about, anything more than just a simple cameo.
Right. Actually, speaking of actors who have signed on for everything, I don't think we saw Sam Jackson in the trailer. But you have to assume he's going to be in the movie, like have some role, even though Nick Fury's been really minimized. But
he looked pretty beat. Now, I don't know whether that was on purpose or not, but he looked pretty bad in Winter Soldier. So I don't know what we're gonna get with that.
Yeah,
so we'll see.
Was he in Civil War?
Yeah, wasn't he in Civil War?
He was in Civil War. Yes, he was in Civil War.
Yeah, he was at the farmhouse or whatever.
Right.
That was like the thing.
Yeah, but he's
wasn't like a very
director
short
without
scene?
an agency, though.
Yeah, it was a pretty short scene. But he sort of was out of hiding, right? He was still in hiding, but like he met up with them.
Yeah. That's the thing, he's kind of a man without a country / director without an agency right now. So it's like, it's great to have him around. But obviously our Nick Fury in the movies is somewhat different than the Nick Fury from the comics, who actually was like somewhat super powered in and of himself, if I remember correctly. At least in some iterations, he was super strong and like he was like actually on the ground.
Well, and he had robot copies of himself all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I would love to see like him show up in a Spider-Man movie, sort of like if you've watched the Ultimate Spider-Man series, where it's like Nova Kid and a bunch of teenage superheroes hanging out with Nick Fury. It's really fun. I think that would be cool, like lighthearted in the Spider-Man sort of vein.
So Zarif says that was Age of Ultron, not Civil War.
Okay.
I'm just trying to remember now. Like they all started.
There's too many movies.
Well, and it's not even that together. Civil War really was like Avengers 2.5. So it's like,
yeah, it was very much very more of an Avengers movie than a Captain America movie.
How did we all come to superheroes? Did you guys read comics when you were younger? I never actually did. Somehow I managed to absorb all the comic stories without ever having really read the comics.
Oh, I got into comics when I was in like 6th or 7th grade. I think like the X-Men animated TV show was on, and there was animated Spider-Man, and there was like all these things that there was ways to consume comic books. Obviously, Batman has been around longer than I've been alive. I think I'm 39 years old, but like I remember watching the cheesy Batman TV show when I was a kid. Now like it's painful to watch, what I know is Batman.
Yeah.
But I mean, so like, there's always exposure to that, regardless of what generation you were born into, without actually having to read the comics. But I read all the X titles, or a bunch of the X titles, for years. Before I was shown to the world of novels and went away from comics, but I was still able to consume it, because every so often, we're going to reboot Batman and we're going to redo another movie, and I would keep watching, and then we wound up getting all the X-Men movies, and then before that was done, we're into the MCU. So there's always been a way to get access to superheroes, even if you're not going to read the comic books.
Well, and so like my example is that like I knew the entire Civil War storyline from the video game Marvel Ultimate Avengers,
Ultimate Alliance,
right. And so that was like, oh, this is a really cool story, and that actually got me. That was one of the few comic book stories I've actually read, because I was like, I want to know what the whole story is. So I went and sought out that series, and I read the whole Civil War series after I had played the video game. So.
And that's a whole other medium that I didn't even get into. Is you've got the whole video game market to get exposure to as well. And if you watch just a little bit of TV or movies, you'd be like, oh well, I'll give this a try. And oh well, there's story here, whether people want to consume it or not. It's still there. It's still available. So
I have a similar story to Ted. Like when I was a kid, I would read some comics off the newsstand. Like I would read Batman, some Batman stuff. I definitely remember buying Batman issue 0 and thinking it was going to be special, but super wasn't. They printed so many of those. And X-Force and all kinds of different stuff in the late 80s and early mid 90s. And then there's so many good animated shows, and then the movies really kicked off with X-Men. Like the first X-Men was the first actually good comic book movie, and sort of started a renaissance of things, because before that it was like live action stuff was terrible. There was only terrible stuff.
There's some talk in the chat happening about not only the X-Men, but also the whole rights situation with like how, Fox has the X-Men and that's why they're not in the MCU. And, some of the people were saying like, oh, I wish I could see them. And then somebody else was sort of countering like, oh, but it kind of makes it a little bit more focused. I kind of agree with that point of view. I mean, like, look at how many characters we're already dealing with. Imagine if we had the entire X universe and the Fantastic Four on top of it all, and trying to get that all integrated. I feel like it would just get ridiculous at a certain point.
Well, because what can be done within comics can't necessarily be done within the movies.
Yeah.
You know, because you can have one artist who's going to just draw whatever he needs to draw, and you can do this huge sprawling scene where you've got, you know, 40, 50, 60, 70 superheroes going up against, you know, an entire army of bad guys. But to actually put the, you know, the big names that you've built up into these characters to go up against that, the budget would just be through the roof. Like,
yeah,
you know,
totally.
And the continuity is already really difficult for them with the movies and TV shows, right? Like they have to like sort of allude to stuff in the movies because the movies sort of go first and the TV shows follow. And
that's what,
you know,
that's what
it's a
they're
difficult
also
thing.
talking about in the chat is how, oh, wouldn't it be great to have, you know, like Daredevil and Jessica Jones crossing over into the movies? And it's like, well, is that really going to happen? And like they tried it a little bit with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like I remember specifically being really frustrated. I think it was the second season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because it was like you could watch the whole season and then Captain America, the Winter Soldier came out. And if you watched the last 2 episodes of that series, of that season, you would be completely lost if you hadn't gone to see the movie because they shuffled the deck with Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. in the movie, which was like 2 episodes before the end of the season. So like, it was like, I mean, from a cross-marketing perspective, it was brilliant because it was like, hey, everybody, go see this movie or else you're going to be lost. But it was definitely like, I remember I couldn't see it the first weekend, so I like held off watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for a couple of weeks till I got to go see the movie because I didn't want spoilers, and it was like, what am I doing? So,
yeah, I mean nowadays it's so much easier to get into comics, I think, because there's so many graphic novel collections. You know, you can go to the library and like check out the Civil War series or the complete Captain America or whatever, right? Like, and also I was thinking about like whenever I want to know about like a comic book plot, I usually just go to Wikipedia and there's like a summary of the entire thing, right? So you can just like know what happened, and then you can go read. You can still read the comic, but like you can get a lot more knowledge about the plots and storylines in a more condensed form than that wasn't available back in that you had to read the comics.
Yeah, you had
right?
to read
There
the
was
comics.
not. Yeah,
that was one of my. Somebody posted once on Facebook. It was like post your, you know, your secret geek shame or whatever, and mine was 9 times out of 10. I much prefer reading the Wikipedia page about something versus the source material.
Like a movie.
Like no, well, reading movies is different. This is like, I have not read The Lord of the Rings. I've seen the movies, but like wanting to read about the backstory, I didn't pick up the Silmarillion. I just went to the Wikipedia page and read all about the backstory of The Lord of the Rings.
Think how much time you could save. You don't have to watch movies. Just read the Wikipedia page. Plot summary.
I've read the original, you know, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I have no interest in reading any of the extended material for you know, Tolkien. The Silmarillion, I was told, is just like, oh, you're just reading a list of facts.
Right.
Is how my friends have put it. And truth be told, you know, as much as a, you know, fantasy nut and D&D nerd that I am, reading Lord of the Rings was painful. Like, I love The Hobbit and I read through it really quickly, but Lord of the Rings movies were fantastic. Books, you'd have to pay me to try and read them again. Like, and I have friends that you know, they go through and they're like, I read this once a year because that's where I need to be at. And I'm like, dude, that's you. That's fine. That ain't me.
You really love songs and Tom Bombadil and descriptions of walking. Then go for it.
Yeah, see, I think the Harry Potters are those for me. Like, I don't read them myself every year, but I'm reading them through with my kids. And sort of like my policy is I read I read the book of the year they are in school. So like when they're in first grade, I read book 1. So it's actually like, you know, 4 years earlier than the age of the characters, but like, you know, subject matter wise, it sort of fits with what they're able to do. So like I'm reading the 6th book with my daughter right now. I'm reading the 4th book with my son, and I'm just starting the 1st book with my youngest daughter. And so I've now read the 1st book for the 3rd time in 5 years. And so like I don't have to reread them myself because I just wait and I'm slowly walking through the series at like 3 different points at any given time with all my kids. So that's a lot of fun for me.
Well, as I told you guys, my son is 9, and within the last few months, we actually just finished reading the entire series to him, and we would read, you know, 1 to 2 chapters a night to him, and he's now been so hooked on it that he wants to read them for himself. So at 9, like right now, he's carrying, Order of the Phoenix, book 5, one of the thick ones, because he won't put it into his backpack. So he carries it, to school, because he knows that if he shoves it in there, it's going to get messed up. And those are his parents' books. They're not, they don't want to get messed up because they're all, first printing bought, at the Friday night release party when they were released.
Nice. Very cool.
So like we've had them ever since, and they've gotten a lot of love. And if you want to really get a treat, if you're into the Harry Potter stuff, the Jim Dale audio is fantastic.
Yes. I've listened to not all of them, but I listened to I think the first 2 in that particular audiobook, and yeah, it's really, really well done.
So I love audiobooks. I tend to consume a lot through that way if I can make it happen. As I had said earlier, I'm a big fan of Jim Butcher, so I'm actually currently going through the umpteenth time of the Dresden series, hoping that by the time I get to the end, I'll at least have a release date for the new books. That who knows how long that's going to be, but I think the last one came out like 3 years ago. So I'm kind of bitter that I don't have Peace Talks yet. But the first real audio that I fell in love with was the Harry Potter books, and Jim Dale does an amazing job.
Yeah, I've only recently gotten back into reading novels. I took a few years off there, and I just started getting back in, and I just was reading. I'll just give a plug to this because I don't think it's a very well-known book, but I really loved it. It's called The Rise and Fall of Dodo. And basically the setup of this, and Dodo stands for Diachronic Operations, Department of Diachronic Operations. And the central concept of it's actually a co-author between Neil Stephenson and somebody else. And the concept of this book is what if magic was real and it's just gone, and there's a scientific explanation for why that is. And yeah, and I don't want to spoil it because the revelation of what that is shockingly plausible from my point of view. But the whole thing is that witches existed up until this point in history when science made it so that they really couldn't do magic anymore. And one of the things that they could do was time travel. And there's a quantum thing involved in this. So when you create a special quantum state, they're able to sort of bring witchcraft back into the world. And I read it literally in 4 days because it just grabbed a hold of me and would not let go. And I'm dying for them to make it into a whole series because it's such a cool concept.
And what is the name of that?
The Rise and Fall of Dodo. D.O.D.O.
Okay, I will have to look into that because that sounds awesome.
I was shocked how much I loved it. My wife that weekend was like, "Are you going to do anything other than read that book?" And I'm like, "I am not going to read anything but this book because it is so good." I highly recommend it. Everyone should check it out.
Awesome.
Maybe we'll make a card game based on it.
All right, so we're at just about 1 o'clock. So I'm gonna thank you guys for coming on and talking. If there's any last thing that you wanna push, you wanna plug, we'll allow you to do that. All the links to all their stuff is down below, so you can jump right to that if you want to go check out the Kickstarter or what have you. But go ahead, guys.
Yeah, that's really it. Obviously One Deck Dungeon, there's literally 24 hours from right now is when it closes. So if you want to check it out, please go do that. If One Deck Dungeon doesn't feel like your particular cup of tea, we also have Sentinels of the Multiverse, superhero comic book card game after we just spent 40 minutes of the 60 talking about superheroes. You could probably check that out. And we also have a competitive baseball game with cards and dice called Bottom of the Ninth. And sentinelsdigital.com is where you find that Sentinels, and bot9digital.com is where you find Bottom of the Ninth. Or if you just search for them, you'll probably find it.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Yeah. Oh, John, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think Jeremy covered it pretty well. We're always excited to be making new games and to be talking about nerdy stuff. So thanks a lot, Ted, for having us on.
Yeah, definitely.
No problem. So, again, thank you guys to you guys out there listening. The links are all down below if you want to jump to any of that stuff. So until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.